Yeah, today on the Making of Me podcast, we are joined by Zola Habibi, an Iranian human rights and women rights advocate, and a leading voice calling for justice, democracy, and freedom in Iran, shaped by the loss of her father to the 1988 massacre and a life defined by resistance. Zola shares what it means to grow up fast, choose purpose, overcome comfort, and continue fighting for those whose voice are silent. It's really a pleasure to have you on the show, Zola.
Thank you very much for having me, and I would like to say hello to the audience who have tuned in.
Yeah, thank you so much, Zola. Yeah, Zola, your journey began with profound loss. How did losing your father at such a young age shape the way you see justice and responsibility?
Uh, well, the reality is that even before my father had been killed by the regime, I had become acquainted with the crimes being committed by this regime against the Iranian people. I think I was only 4 years old when I first met victims of torture who had been able to escape the prisons of Iran. And very early on, I knew I had seen the images of children, 13, 14 years old, who had been executed by this regime. So I knew that the regime knows no borders when it comes to executions. So I always felt that, first of all, I valued the freedom that I had and I didn't take it for granted. And I knew that there are millions who are denied that same right and that same possibility. And so I always felt a responsibility to try to be the voice of the Iranian people. Even as a child, I looked at it as a responsibility. And I think that really helped me process what I was also going through myself, because having that understanding, I knew that, first of all, I wasn't alone. I knew that, in fact, even as a victim of the regime, I was still one of the lucky ones, because there are a lot of people inside everyone who are worse than me. And that was an ambition or an inspiration to try to help others always. Because when you help others, then your own problems don't seem that big. When you consider others and when that becomes your priority, then you start to look at things through a different lens, and to be able to help others and be able to really connect at a different level and take responsibility at a different level.
Wow, amazing, amazing. This was actually very powerful. Like the fact that, yeah, despite those hurts, just make reference of when you help others, you see things from a different light. And that's really, really amazing, I must say. Yeah, so growing up during war and being separated from your mother forced you to mature quickly. What did that season teach you about resilience?
I think I practically responded to that question. Yeah, it was a difficult stage. I mean, you can imagine, for a child, I was 7.5 when my father had been killed, and before my 10th birthday, due to the circumstances and the fact that there was the first Gulf War, I had to be separated from uh, my mother. My mom sent me and my brother back to the U.S. for us to be in safety and security. And but I think at that moment I understood that the decision that my mother was making was a very difficult one. But I have always respected her for making such a sacrifice. But as a generation, we're a very lucky generation to have such role models in our lives. We've seen, in Iran, 20,000 people have given up their lives for freedom in Iran. So you can just imagine right now, when you see the bravery on the streets of Iran, this generation, they have those mentors, they
Hmm.
have ideals in their heads. They've seen that, generation by generation, people have paid a price for freedom. No one's going to hand us freedom in a silver platter. And I think that um, is what um, makes you understand resilience differently, and resistance. So for us, it has always been, we are very lucky to be growing up in a time that we have this opportunity and this possibility to be a part of something that's much bigger than ourselves, and that's shaping the future and destiny of a nation. So I think that in itself is the greatest inspiration to, if we can be one of those building blocks that will create a democratic republic in Iran, then that I think is the greatest achievement we could have in our lives.
Wow, that was really amazing. And the fact that your mother was more like a model, despite the inconvenience of actually more like, yes, the separation, she still went ahead and do it. I thank God she did that. That was really, really amazing. So at 18, you stood across the crossroad between medical careers and full-time activism. What made you choose the path of resistance?
Well, those days were kind of like what we are seeing today in Iran. For the first time, as a background, since 1981, the Iranian regime started its brutal crackdown against opposition from June 20th, 1981. And, when they actually opened fire on a peaceful protest of 500,000 people in Tehran, which was a spontaneous protest that had come together that day. And since that day, the Iranian resistance, specifically the People's Mujahideen Organization of Iran, had to go underground. They have been throughout these over 4 decades have been the main target of the Iranian regime because the regime sees them as the only threat to its existence. 1988, from 1981 to 1988, the regime was able to control over society by, first of all, with mass executions that they carried out on daily basis, but also there was an 8-year war with Iraq. So they had a foreign enemy. So they would say, keep silent, we have a foreign enemy. But the moment that war ended, the regime knew that there was this volcano about to erupt in society. So they needed something to spread fear in society. And so they carried out the 1988 massacre, where 30,000 people were executed in just 5-6 weeks. In 5-6 weeks, without their trial was they were asked one to three questions, and they were taken to execution straight from there. So it wasn't even a trial, really. Most of them, all of those prisoners, some of them, they had finished their sentences. Some had already been sentenced, but to prison and not execution, but despite that, they were all taken for execution. With that, Khomeini spread fear in society, and so no one dared to really come to the streets too much. If you look from 1988 till the summer of 1999. The summer of 1999, there was a student uprising in Iran, and it was the first of these uprisings in practically from 1981 till then. So it was a new phenomenon, and it was our generation that was coming into the streets now. Our generation, a generation that had seen nothing but this regime. They were born for the most part after the revolution, and it was now them who came to the streets. And at that time, there was no there was minimum internet. Internet was just getting started back. But for the first time, these things were being broadcast. I remember at the time it was like CNN or whatnot. There weren't that many television channels, but it was being reported. And so the world was seeing this unfold for the first time directly. And I remember seeing those scenes and thinking, what am I doing? The thought of me being one of those who goes to Iran once Iran is freed with an airplane, that really bothered me. I was like, no, I have to be a part of this. I have to be one of those who helps bring freedom to the people of Iran. And that was a turning point for me. So the reality is, at that time, I had seen an article a few months before that was printed in a magazine that said there were over 20,000 Iranian doctors working in the US at that time. Right now, it's much, much more. And I thought, am I going to be one of these 20,000? Or am I going to be one of those who Iran? So these 20,000 and the other thousands of thousands can go and actually help their people and to be able to serve their people. And so that was what shifted my journey.
Wow.
And I decided to join the Iranian resistance. And today, after 26 years, almost 27 years, in a few months, as we entered the new year, I have no regrets. I'm very happy that I made that decision. And after 27 years, we're seeing the fruit of it right now on the streets of Iran. The rebellious youth who are taking to the streets, risking their lives, and they're putting their life on the line. They only want one thing. They want freedom in Iran. They want a secular democratic republic in Iran. They want to end to all forms of tyranny, be it all forms of dictatorship, be it the past dictatorship or the current dictatorship. They want to move forward to a democratic republic in Iran. And that is the cry that we're hearing from the streets of Iran. So I think that the people of Iran revolted for a reason in 1979 because we had a dictatorship with its brutalities, with the Savak who killed, executed, suppressed. But then unfortunately, that revolution was stolen by Khomeini, who did, 100-fold worse. So, but unfortunately, right now in the international community, you see people saying, okay, so if you want to overthrow the mullahs, are you going back to the previous government? No, people want to move forward. They want to move forward. They voted for a reason, but unfortunately, that revolution was stolen. But now we're going to take the next step and push away all forms of dictatorship, be it the religious dictatorship or a classical dictatorship. And we want to walk into the new century, really, with a democratic republic for Iran.
Wow, that must really, really be the fact that your goals of uh becoming more like more of the head worker to being an activist was a really, really big sacrifice that you actually just kind of uh look from it. That was really, really amazing. Women are leading the resistance movement in Iran today. From your perspective, why has women leadership become so central?
Well, I think that if you look at the nature of the current regime, it's a very suppressive regime. Its fundaments are based on suppression, and it's a misogynist regime. So from practically day one, I think it was about a month or so, I mean a few months after the revolution, that Khomeini tried to bring in laws against women's rights, right? To limit their rights. Why? Because if you're able to control half of society with these misogynist laws that you have, then you have control over society when half of society is in chains, right? So Khomeini based his whole structure on this repression and suppression and trying to limit the women of Iran who played a major role in the uprisings against the Shah. But one of their slogans was, we didn't revolt to go back in time, we revolted to go forward, even back then. And so we have seen that this regime has suppressed women systematically in Iran for over nearly 5 decades now. So the Iranian resistance saw that potential in the women of Iran and saw that, from day one, the revolution against the Shah, women played a key role. Women played a central role, but they weren't being recognized for the role that they were playing. And so 1985, the Iranian resistance actually realized that, women are going far and beyond what everyone expects. They have to fight both the regime, but also the backward mindsets that still exist in a society which is male dominant. I mean, from families who, they were hesitant for their daughters to become political activists. They were afraid because they're like, what if you get arrested and then we know in prison what's going to happen? They're going to torture you, they're going to rape you, they're going to do this and they're going to do that. And that fear just made families try to limit their children from becoming
Yeah.
activists, right? So these women were the people who went through all of that. They pushed all those barriers aside and they kept on resisting and they kept on continuing. But we saw that even though even in prisons, they were the one who were resisting the most because they were targeted twofolds by because this hatred that the mullahs had that these women are standing in defiance of us, it just hit them in a lot of different levels, right? And so they were showing their role as vanguards in this fight. So the Iranian resistance actually, in their annual analysis, they reached the point that they realized that we need to have women represented in the leadership, in those key roles, and we need women's empowerment. So the resistance chose Mrs. Mariam Rajavi as the person who was most capable and had, she had proven her capabilities through a decade of fighting against the regime. And so she was chosen as co-leader of the movement. And then she started creating a new phenomenon. She didn't want to be just one person herself. She wanted to create a whole generation of female leaders and to she extended her hand to every single person and said, come with me. You have the potential. You have the power. to create change. And so, and throughout these years, it's been 40 years now that he's been leading this movement, but she is the president-elect of the National Council of Resistance of Iran right now. Just one very important note. The National Council of Resistance of Iran is the parliament in exile of the Iranian resistance, and it represents all ethnic groups, minorities in Iran, different religious groups, and even people who are non-believers. It represents all parts of Iranian society. And 52% of this parliament in exile are women, which speaks for it.
Wow.
And in the MEK itself, in the People's Mujahideen Organization of Iran, the entire leadership council of this movement are all women. And what they do is they have created a new culture of how to work with one another, how to actually really inspire one another, help one another, and push forward. And so that is what has made this resistance be able to overcome very, very serious obstacles, and really it's withstood the test of time, that the role of women's leadership and what they can do. So if you saw in Iran, like for instance in 2022, a lot of people were in shock to see like women leading the protest. But for us as Iranians, it wasn't shocking because we have history and we know where they got that bravery and that inspiration from. Because even if they might, because there's a lot of censorship in Iran, and we have been the main targets of the censorship and the and also the what's it called, the propaganda machine of the regime. Even if people don't know it directly, but it is in the back set of their mind, and it's this collective response of knowing that women have broken all the glass seats in this movement, and they are trailblazers really for the world, I think, in the issue of women's equality and women's empowerment. So that is what energizes the people on the ground in Iran, because they know that there isn't anything that they can't do. And so this generation has grown up with that message that we can and we must. We have the potential, we have the capability, and women are the force for change. And so that's why you see the importance of the role of women inside of Iran, inside the resistance, and leading the way, hopefully, towards a free Iran, as we are in one of the biggest uprisings that we have seen in Iran in the last few decades.
Wow. This is really a lot and a whole lot to actually more like look at. And the fact that the women are not standing up, there's a whole lot of models who get to inspire the next generation. And yeah, it's really amazing. So you have actually spent more like a decade speaking for those inside Iran who cannot speak freely. How do you carry the emotional weight without burning out?
As I said, I'm going to go back to what I said at the beginning, just knowing that, seeing that as a responsibility, that you have this opportunity to actually do something, and seeing that as a responsibility, and always knowing that, look, there are so many people who have it so much worse, that you're one of the lucky ones who you have the possibility to be the change you want to see. And I think that with that in mind, you never burn out, because I think that it's one thing that's really important is that all humans, we have no limits in giving. The more you give, the more you see that there's more that you can give.
There's more you can
There's no, and you can't put a end to that, or you can't put it like a stopping point to that. You always have the capability to sacrifice and give and give and give. And whenever you give, the more you give, the more strength you gain, the more perspective you have, and the greater understanding that you have of the fact that you have so much more potential to give. So I think it's an ever giving cycle. And I think that is something that I have learned myself from Mrs. Rajavi and the role model that she has set for us. And because I've never seen her stop at any issue. She always says there's a solution. We just have to figure out what we have to sacrifice this time.
To get the solution. Wow.
Yeah, to gain the solution.
Oh, that was really amazing, and just having that at the back of your mind that there's an opportunity for us to be of service to those who couldn't speak up, actually uphold each and everything, and speak up until we get a solution. That was really, really amazing, and the fact that there's a whole lot of model. So many outsiders in Iran misunderstand the opposition's movement. What is the most damaging misconception you encounter?
One is that they see the regime as having a stronghold, because Iran is the #1 state sponsor of terrorism. It makes threats. They see Iran's meddling or its warmongering as a strength, despite the fact that it's a sign of its weakness. It needs that to be able to survive. It's not out of strength that it's making threats. It's out of weakness that it
Mm.
needs to create this bluff of trying to present itself as something that's, strong or stable. And with that, when you have that wrong analysis, then you set the table wrong. People, unfortunately, for generations, for decades now, the Iranian people have paid the price for the wrong policy toward Iran. Those who think that through appeasing the mullahs, they can reach something. The reality is that this regime is not reformable. A viper never gives birth to a dove, right? So regime has shown, regime that doesn't show mercy to its own people, a regime that doesn't show mercy to executes like a 13-year-old girl and an elderly mother in her 80s. This regime doesn't see any borders when it comes to atrocities. If you think that they're negotiable, then you're getting something wrong. And then if you feel disappointed that they have manipulated you, that's on you, because you should have understood that this regime is not negotiable. Its appeasement is only going to extend the lifeline of this regime. And unfortunately, appeasement is what leads to a point where there are no other options on the table except war. So what we say is the solution to Iran, it's not war or appeasement. It's supporting the Iranian people and their organized resistance to be able to create change. Right now, today that we are recording this is day 13 of the nationwide uprisings in Iran. Where is the international support and solidarity? At maximum, you see governments making statements that we stand by the peaceful protesters in Iran. Well, do you not stand with the protesters in general if they have to defend themselves against the repressive forces? Where is the outcry of the fact that the regime is using live ammunition to target protesters? Right now, the National Council of Resistance of Iran has published the names of 44 of those who have been killed. We know that there are a lot more killed, and last night was a turning point that the regime shut down the internet, and so that way they had open hands to kill on the streets. So there's a lot of people who have been killed, and we just need to be able to gather and verify that information. But from the 44 that you look,
Wow.
7 of the 44 are teenagers, and that speaks for itself. And every uprisings we see that the regime targets children, 13, 14, even 10-year-olds who've been killed in the uprisings in Iran. So this is the reality of this regime, and we need to understand that. So the international community needs to stand by the Iranian people and support them to overthrow this regime. We don't want foreign intervention, because we have that experience of the coup d'etat against Dr. Mossadegh, who was the only democratic government that Iran has ever had. So we don't want foreign intervention. We also know that it was foreign intervention that brought the Shah in power. It was foreign intervention that brought Khomeini in power. So we don't want foreign intervention. The people have the capability to bring about that change, and they have an organized resistance. So for one thing, this is one of the misconceptions. The other misconception is what I pointed out to before. The people of Iran are not stuck in choosing between bad and worse. We don't have to choose between either the mullahs or go back to the previous monarchy, which is another form of dictatorship.
Yeah.
There's a third option there too, and that's allowing the people of Iran to take their destiny into their own hands and to create a democratic republic, a secular democratic republic in Iran, where the ballot box is the final criterion, and that there's people, that it's the sovereignty of the people, and that is what's important. And to be able to do that, right now, unfortunately, you see in the media some players trying to promote the return of the Shah. No, we don't want a return of the Shah. The slogans on the streets in Iran right now is down with the oppressor, be it the Shah or the mullahs or the leader. Or like one of their other slogans is no to the turban, no to the crown. We want freedom and equality. So these are the slogans on the ground in Iran. Listen to it and just support the Iranian people. You don't have to go behind some kind of a puppet who is going to, you think it serves your interests better. Let the Iranian people take their destiny into their own hands. They have that capability and that capacity to do so. And this is actually what will unify the Iranian people. The fact that they know that they have the possibility to have a true democracy form in Iran at this stage. So I think that is one of the major misconceptions right now, that unfortunately there are those with interest who are trying to promote that. But the reality on the ground is something else. So I think that is also one of the misconceptions. And yeah, those are, I think, the main ones that we are dealing with these days. Yeah, the Iranian people are trying to make sure that they try to get their message across. And this is something that they're not going to allow their revolution to be stolen. And right now, their main concentration is to make sure that these protests turn to uprising and turn to a revolution. So that's main concentration right now.
Wow, amazing, amazing. There's a whole lot to actually unpack here. And I'm glad that the Iranian people are still coming out and shisha appearing their cause. And I hope soon that they actually more like get kind of take their future into their own hands and being able to make something better out of it compared to the dictatorship. Yeah, there's a lot. So looking back, Hola, how has grief separate the long-term struggle, shaped the woman and the leader you have become today?
As I said, I think that it has taught me that what's important in life um, is the lessons you learn and your actions. Like, for instance, maybe I didn't have my parents with me growing up step by step, but I think that they were the greatest role models for me, not through their words, but through their own actions. The fact that they put the freedom of their country before what they cherished the most in life, their own life and their children. And I think that hardship is, they're all experiences that you learn from, and they do shape who we are, but it also broadens your horizon. I think that if I lived in a bubble, I probably wouldn't have the experience that I have today. And it just makes you grow and makes you realize that, the world is so much bigger than just looking at, living in your own bubble. When we look at history, when we have an understanding of history, when we have an understanding of the fact that this life is here to pass and it's not going to be, it's not eternal. So, what are you making of every day that you are here? And what kind of an impact are you making on humanity? I think it just shifts your priorities, and it's one thing that I could have just, thought, I'm such, you know, I've had such a hard life, and so I should concentrate on myself. Or no, I'm going to actually understand that I had the possibility to learn early on and grow up really quick and understand the complexity of the world, and to find my place in it and the role that I can play in it, and how I can change. Not only can I take my own destiny in my own hand, but I can change the path of history.
Wow.
I think that's something that every single one of us can do,
Yeah.
no matter where you are, no matter what you're doing. And I think today is one of those days that, even if you're not Iranian and if you're not in Iran, we all have social media now. Go on social media, echo this message. Iranian people have reached a turning point. They want a democratic, secular democratic republic in Iran. They want to put an end to all forms of tyranny and dictatorship. Voice your solidarity with them. Start that conversation, inform yourself, understand what's at play, be aware, just have those red flags go off whenever you see someone saying, yeah, the Iranian people want to end to this tyranny, so they want to go back in time. No, they don't want to go back in time. They want to move forward. And so let's just repeat those messages. And there are a lot of resources that we can use right now. If people who are interested, there is the website of the National Council of Resistance of Iran. It's ncr-iran.org that they could visit for the latest. And there's also the social media accounts of Mariam Rajavi, the president-elect of the resistance that I told you about. The NCRA, it's called Iran underscore policy on X. But there are also, like, on Instagram, there's Iran uprisings, there's Iran explained, there are Rajavi news. There are a lot of outlets that you can go to and learn about what the people of Iran want and what they're doing. There is a whole array of accounts that you can follow and learn more. So, reach out, understand the fight of the Iranian people, and show your support and solidarity.
Yeah, amazing. Thank you so much. This has really been amazing. What be your final words to the Iranian who are currently more like championing the costs and those who are currently not in Iran? What will be your final words to them?
My final remarks is, as I said, every single one of us can play a role and every
Yeah.
single one of us can make an impact. So leave your footprints, support the Iranian people in this fight, and see what causes are around you that you can also, support, and you can, push forward and make a difference in your own society and where you live and your own, city, neighborhood, country, but also be vigilant of what's going on around the world and lend your hand, a helping hand where you can. And today, stand by the Iranian people. Right now, at least across Europe, US, Canada, Australia, a lot of Iranians are holding demonstrations, rallies, things like that. Join, voice your support, stand with them. And yeah, thank you very much.
Yeah. Yeah. Thank you, Zola. So for those who actually want to connect with you, want to reach out to you, and yeah, where should they reach out and where's the best platform to do this?
Well, I am available on Instagram, X, LinkedIn. So if you just put in my name, you should be able to find it. But on X and Instagram, my handle is Ashrafi for the number four ever. But yeah, if you just search my name, you should be able to find it too.
Yeah, amazing. Thank you, Zola. Your story reminds us that courage uh, is often born from loss and leadership from sacrifice. Your journey reflects that power of choosing purpose, even when the cost is high, and the importance of standing for freedom beyond borders. To learn more about Iranian resistance and democracy alternatives, it's Miriam.forchange.com. It's going to be on the show notes. And once again, thank you for listening to The Making of Me. It's really, really a pleasure have you on the show as well.
Thank you. Have a nice day.